Welcome to Get Mental with Utter Nonsense. I'm your host, Dr. Geri-Lynn Utter. So my house became the party house. So everybody would drink and first smoke weed in my house. But then the kids I grew up with, because I grew up in two different parts of the city. My dad lived in Kensington after my parents divorced, and my mom was in Northeast Philadelphia. They started to get involved in heroin. We would call it down the way, and down the way meant Kensington. So they would drive from Academy Road on 95 in Philly and drive down and get off at Allegheny, which is a 15-minute ride, and they would get drugs. How our mom got introduced into her opioid addiction was first by using Vicodin for tooth pain. And then she graduated, as we say, or her disease progressed to heroin.
I thought it was my fault because as soon as all I knew from birth was bad chaos, trauma. So I felt like it was all my fault. I made their lives worse. So that's why they didn't like me. They didn't want me. I always knew that they didn't want me because they never had me.
Right.
So you just always feel not wanted, and you don't know what to do to get wanted.
Mess of the woman who he had come in to eavesdrop, because not only was that a breach of confidentiality for Eric Menendez, because he was telling this woman to come in and eavesdrop. So that's a breach of confidentiality. And he was talking to her about it, which was a breach of confidentiality. But on top of that, the other ethical things was this was a woman who was a patient of his that he was having an affair with, that he was having sex with.
He gets ready and he's going into the office and he's still drunk from the night before. He's an absolute mess. He's mad because his car runs out. And so he's like a train wreck. He gets into the office and he sits down, and then in comes a patient. I'm like, dude, this guy's the therapist. And I'm like, I respect it. With some type of earlier intervention and explanation to Eric of how the therapeutic process is supposed to work, it may have been prevented, because he may have been able to utilize therapy and treatment for himself in the way that it was intended to be used, instead of just using it as an opportunity to shoot the shit because he knew that everything he said was going to go back. And maybe the therapist could have empowered, both of them to leave, or, because everybody's like, why don't they just leave? Well, you can't just leave when you're being abused and coerced and controlled.
Come in and you are love bombed. You are told that you're put on the pedestal. You're told that you're amazing, that you're wonderful. They'll do anything for you. They're not going to tell you what they actually want. Now, they know. They do know. Usually they know. But they're not going to tell you that. So I always tell people that I'm talking to, I frame it in the form of a cult, but this can happen with any relationship. But if you're a cult leader, you're not going to walk up to a person and go, hey, you know what? I got this group and I'm totally going to control your life. I'm going to tell you what you can eat, when you can sleep, who you can have sex with, and you're also going to have sex with me. And I'm going to cut you off from everyone that you know. Are you down? Most people are going to say, no.
Around coercive control, unless you're the person being victimized, it's really hard for other people on the outside to understand what coercive control is and how powerful that is for the individual that's on the receiving end of it.
They join a movement that they think is good and helpful. And the same is true in interpersonal relationships. You are not entering into an abusive relationship. Nobody enters into an abusive relationship. Right? They enter into a relationship with a person that they think is good and kind and decent, that loves them, because that's what is portrayed to them. What then starts to happen is that their tension starts to build in the relationship. Pressure, demands start to happen, right? This is what people sometimes will call indoctrination.
Everything that's happening in the background with this partner who's talking badly about she's just jealous of you. She's a bitch, or she's this, or she's that. Then what happens, because you love this person and you want it to work out, even though your best friend has your best interest at heart and is like, this person's XYZ, you then become defensive of your abuser. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Get Mental with Utter Nonsense.
Until next time, get real, get inspired, and get mental.